In this video, we're going to be talking about my top 10 aquarium plants that won't need any soil. Now, I have made this video in the past before. This one is going to be specifically for those that are able to grow in a substrate without soil, so not going to mention any floaters or epiphytes. And some of these plants are going to be from my video previously, but I do believe this list is going to be much more useful. Starting off with plant number 10 is jungle val. Jungle val is one of my favorite aquarium plants to keep. They are a very hardy rooted plant and they could grow super tall. Jungle val is a very heavy root feeder. It's going to feed entirely from its roots basically, and it propagates by sending out runners. So for these plants you will need a very good substrate, not only nutrient rich but also deep. Now for nutrients, soil is not a necessity for these plants. They will work in gravel, sand, just gotta have a substrate. I use gravel for my jungle val and they grow really well in it, constantly propagate, and there's just full of these awesome plants. Now with that being said, they do propagate super fast. They send out these things called runners, which basically when they've got enough nutrients, they will send these things out. They will get into the substrate and form a new plant out of it. So here you could see just multiple jungle vals just growing from this one original stem. It just keeps on propagating. If possible, it will cover up the entire tank. This is my jungle val black neon tetra tank, and you could see how much jungle val is in there. So they're a heavy root feeder. Make sure to feed them heavily through the roots. Liquid fertilizer is not going to do much for these guys. I would recommend root tabs as it will help them out greatly. Usually fish waste alone is not going to be enough, so keep that in mind. At number 9 we got Alodia. Alodia is a stem plant that can also be rooted. Alodia is a very common plant. You see it used in ponds. These are some of the most fast growing aquarium plants you will ever keep. I got them when I first started out fish keeping and they grew super duper fast, but make sure you get enough light for these plants. They are a stem plant as well. They take a lot of nutrients from the water column, can grow up to 2 inches every day if fertilized properly. Like I said, they can also be rooted, so if they got roots and you got a substrate, they're gonna plunge their roots into whatever substrate you got and look for whatever nutrients it could find. Doesn't have to be a dirt substrate. Inert substrate with fish waste as fertilizer will work, but yeah, it mainly feeds from the water. If you ever need to fertilize them, make sure to fertilize through the water column. What I recommend you do is plant them near the substrate and allow the roots to slowly develop, and over time they will anchor themselves. This is what I recommend for anyone keeping this plant. It's the best method that I've found so far, although you could also plant it directly in. Planting Alodia near the substrate is going to help a lot. Their roots will always be looking for nutrients, and putting them near the substrate will allow the plant to more easily access any organic waste that is present. Alodia is just a wonderful beginner plant for anyone to keep. No soil, no root tabs needed. Liquid fertilizer if you do. It's very hardy. Number 8 on my list is red tiger lotus. Tiger lotus is a bulb plant. It's kind of an oddball plant. It looks a lot different from other aquarium plants, and this is because it's essentially a lotus. So you know the lotus plants you see in the ponds? This is just like one of them but for your aquarium. It's a beautiful looking plant in my opinion. It's got a beautiful red color. If you provide it with enough nutrients, it will keep growing new leaves, keep expanding. The leaves are really beautiful. And yes, this plant will grow out of water. Not as much as you think. It's just like a lily pad that's on the surface, but it is pretty awesome. The way these plants get their nutrients is from their roots in the substrate. The way you plant these guys is you push the bulb a little bit into the substrate, because what we want is for the roots to come down and anchor itself and eventually grow the plant. Most of them are sold as tiny bulbs, might be a little bit of a leaf. I grew mine from a really small bulb. I placed it partially under the sand and it just started to grow and grow and grow. Tiger lotus gets its nutrients from the water and the substrate. It does not need soil. I actually began growing this plant using fish waste alone from the substrate. As it grew, deficiencies started to appear, and soon enough I was sending in root tab after root tab. I would say if you want the optimal growth, you will need to use root tabs, maybe just 1 or 2 every few weeks. Should keep them replenished, but they do feed mainly from the roots, so make sure the substrate is fertilized, but also from the water column. Just got these huge leaves as you can see. A tip I would give for keeping these plants well is to not touch them or bother them too much. These plants have these really fragile leaves. I just wouldn't go messing with it when it's in the tank. Just leave it be, let it grow, let it expand. Number 7 on the list is dwarf sage. Dwarf sage is kind of similar to jungle val, and I know I've mentioned this in many videos, but they are very similar. It's kind of just like a smaller version of jungle val. They also grow by spreading runners. Great carpeting plant. You could see them in action, multiplying itself, spreading runners, and just carpeting the whole bottom. Great carpeting plant, super hardy. Compared to jungle val, this plant is much better for smaller tanks, so if you've got like a 5-gallon and you've wanted to keep jungle val but you're afraid of it getting too large, I would recommend dwarf sage. These carpeting plants can do well under any light, although they do prefer high light. Just like jungle val, these plants will need to be fertilized heavily through the substrate. Root tabs are again my go-to choice. Fish waste works, but I wouldn't use it alone. It depends. You could think of dwarf sage as basically a mini jungle val. Speaking of which, they're not even that small actually. Some people have grown these plants to over 5 inches. Number 6 on this list is going to be the Amazon sword plant. Amazon swords are a popular plant that can grow pretty huge. They can literally cover up an entire tank and outgrow it. Amazon sword plants will develop very deep root systems. Those roots are literally going to cover up as much ground as possible. These plants are heavy root feeders. I would say like 90% of their growth comes from their roots, even more probably. You will need to add lots of root tabs for this plant. For a medium-sized Amazon sword, I would add 3 or 4 just around the roots so it always has food. That's what I did when I planted mine in. It grew really well in the beginning. You will need to add lots of root tabs for this plant. I would not rely on fish waste for this one as it's simply not enough. Trust me, I've tried. A lot of people take advantage of those huge leaves to breed egg-laying fish. Like angelfish, fish are going to lay their eggs on the leaf. What you could do is just simply snip the leaf off with the eggs on it. So that's really convenient. And at number 5, we've got S. repens. These are another carpeting plant. They grow very compactly, got those small light green leaves. This plant is very commonly sold as tissue cultures. It's a very well-known aquascaping plant. S. repens can live fine without soil. You will need to provide root tabs. CO2 is going to help this plant grow heaps faster. They're not a must-need, although good lighting is something that you do. You'll want to give them medium to high lighting. Number 4 on the list is pearlweed. Pearlweed is a fast-growing stem plant, and it does kind of grow like a weed. These are hardy stem plants, and they're not too sensitive as to what substrate they're in. You just gotta have something. This plant actually takes more nutrients from the water column than the substrate they're in, but a good substrate does help. It mainly helps them get anchored as they're pretty much always kept planted in. You will need to provide good lighting for these plants. I would definitely make sure they're getting enough. Pearlweed is a well-known aquascaping plant. People use them to create beautiful carpets. In fact, there's many uses of these fast-growing plants. They could also be used in the background. Once they're settled in, pearlweed propagates itself through runners, but a faster way to reproduce these plants is to manually cut off the stems at any point and then replant the stems elsewhere. Because this is a stem plant, it's going to continue growing, and that's how you could propagate them quickly. Pearlweed is definitely at the top of my list for beginner stem plants. At number 3, we got Bacopa, aka moneywort. I don't know which one you hear more, but they're the same thing. These are very hardy plants. They get their nutrients both from the substrate and from the water column. Either way, they will grow roots near those round leaves. Those roots are just an extra layer of nutrient absorbers. They're either going to get nutrients from the water column or the substrate. For these plants, you can easily propagate them by cutting off their stems and then replant the other stems somewhere else. It will grow very well in sand or gravel. You can grow them by relying on fish waste alone. Root tabs will definitely help. The reason for this is because Bacopa absorbs lots of its nutrients from the water column, and fun fact, they can even grow out of water. That way they are able to acquire CO2 from the air and continue expanding. Some people have these plants grow way out of water, completely immersed. Another fun fact is that these plants are commonly used as medicine. Not exactly sure what for, but they seem to be some sort of supplement. Anyways, they're a great aquarium plant. They get nutrients from both the substrate and from the water, I'd say equally. This is definitely one of the most interesting aquarium plants. They can either grow in water, partially in water, or completely without. Finally, at number 2, we've got water wisteria. Water wisteria is another stem plant. It's got these fern-like green leaves. These plants are very easy to grow. It has a really nice look to it. These plants can grow floating as well, although they're most commonly planted in the substrate. They don't need any soil. Water wisteria gets a lot of their food from the water column actually, as well as their roots. These are one of my top beginner plants. They're easy to grow, very hardy, but these plants are gonna also develop many roots that are gonna reach down to the substrate. They are sometimes prone to melting, and that's because in the farms that they're raised in, they're grown immersed, which means that part of them is grown out of water, and their leaves actually look different. You could see if the leaves are more roundish, that means they have been grown immersed. Once they are converted to living underwater, their leaves will start looking like a fern, so like those wider leaves and more narrow. Finally, at number 1 are crypts. Cryptocorynes are among the easiest rooted plants to keep. They are usually used as a foreground to midground plant, but you could see here that they just look amazing. They come in many different varieties. There's Crypt Wendi's, there's Crypt Parva, there's many different types of cryptocorynes out there. Cryptocorynes get their nutrients from the substrate they are planted in, but also through their leaves. Mainly though, it's from their rooting systems, and you don't need a soil substrate for these plants at all. They will do fine in fish waste alone in my experience, but you just gotta have enough. I would definitely supply them with root tabs to keep them long term. In some cases, the crypts you get might melt when you first plant them in, and this is because the farms that they're grown in grow crypts immersed, which is that they grow the leaves out of water. But when they get to your aquarium, they start to melt because they're not used to growing underwater, and that causes the leaves to kind of like melt away. If that ever happens to you, don't just throw it away. The key thing here is that as long as the roots are healthy, and if your tank provides good fertilization, good lighting, the plant is going to grow back very quickly. Cryptocorynes also do better when you plant them together, so if you get like 3 of those plants, make sure you plant them around the same spot, don't spread them out. They will grow well as long as you provide root tabs or if there's enough fish waste in the substrate. A lot of times it could grow even without that. Easy plant to care for. They have extremely versatile roots that are going to be able to supply the plant. They will grow very long roots, and before you realize the plant is going to grow really big, and after they get bigger you could simply just separate the crown, which is the bottom part of the plant, and then replant it. That's how I managed to grow an entire forest of crypts at one point. If you want to know more about growing aquarium plants without soil, watch this video right here. Thank you guys for watching. See you next time.